Polny-Biblically.com. Bo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Elijah. Nice to speak with you, and great to be here again. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'd first like to get your perspective on the gold and silver markets. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had seen gold and silver kind of move a lot higher. Silver went to about $20 and gold above $1,300. What is your perspective on the recent price action in the precious metals?
With relation to gold and silver, the first part of July, we did have an up cycle into July, and what we were hoping for was actually even higher prices than that were achieved. But still, gold got up to, I think, 1377 for the high. And so yeah, silver did get up to the high 20 into the mid 21s. So the key resistance for silver was at 18 and 1850 actually, and then for gold it was at 1300. So both of those have been broken now. But yes, there was a nice move. It just off that move, we, in terms of the paper positions, it was time to be out of those positions off the high. And typically in the month of July, you have what's called a summer doldrum. The summer, there's just not a lot going on, so it's weakness. So don't be surprised if we have a little bit more weakness in the precious metals in this month of July right now. But again, we are in a bull market. Gold is going much, much higher than it is right now. And, these prices here where gold's trading at, when we got today for gold right now sits at about 1320, and silver's currently at 1963 exactly, today, the 25th of July. So, these lows, that we're seeing here are a blessing. In terms of picking up some gold and precious metals at lower prices, but again, don't be surprised if we see a little bit more weakness here in the month of July.
All right, and what about the stock market? I know we've seen recently the stock market hit all-time highs. What is your perspective on this?
Well, I would suggest that just as a preface to the stock markets, it's very important to go back, and if you or your listeners or viewers want to watch my videos, but look at the videos that we did all of last year, the one in December, giving the true date of the Shemitah that we're expecting, which is the it's a cycle move, a transition point for our world here coming up this October. But in all of our videos, we always did our math calculations using the NASDAQ. Okay, so we've talked about the S&P and the Dow in the past, but the specific, if you go watch the videos, the actual charts that were used and the exact calculations to show how we did the calculation top, it was specifically using only the NASDAQ and nothing else. And so from the year 2000, we had a 7-year, 7-month, 7-day cycle, and that put in an exact top on the NASDAQ on the 31st of October, 2008. And then 7 years, 7 months, 7 weeks to the exact day was July 19th, which was a Sunday, the 2015 of last year. So the first trading day was the exact high for the NASDAQ. And that was of last year on the 20th of July. And since then, all the world markets, including the NASDAQ, have all dropped. And virtually every single world market is lower since 2015. The only two markets, that you can really see that are higher are the S&P and the Dow. But those two markets were not based off our calculations. So if you look at the NASDAQ, you'll notice the NASDAQ is still lower today than it was on the 20th of July of 2015, last year. With relation to the markets, that was today being the 25th of July. Again, mathematically, if you're looking at religious years, you're looking at a year. So that would push last high to July of this year. So mathematically, there's an extremely high probability that the U.S. and all the markets are sitting on highs again, right here, right now, a year later from the 20th of last year, and give or take a few days. So from this time point, the U.S. markets including even though the U.S., the S&P and the Dow have gone higher, it's irrelevant. But in terms of time, that should have run out of energy now, and we should see the markets begin to roll over. And I do believe our NASDAQ call of last year of the 20th will hold like a rock. And this is now the third lower high for the NASDAQ, and we expect the equity markets to be rolling over, here and now, for the next period of time. But definitely, what I'm seeing here is the markets are supposed to be, from a cycle perspective, rolling over now.
All right, now I'd like to move to some viewers' questions. Now, the first viewer's question is about the stock market, and they're wondering, when the Dow suffers its biggest drop at some point in the next 2 months, will share prices of precious metal miners plummet as well?
I think that's a good question. I do believe that the mining stocks will back off. I don't, but I do believe that we're going to go higher first. And so I believe we're going to have an upcycle here for the precious metals. I believe the miners are going to go up. The mining stocks will move up with gold and silver. And then as the markets are crashing initially, I will believe that the mining stocks will go up. And then on the severe portion of the crash, the mining stocks will probably back off or pull back and drop with silver as well too. But I believe that'll be off the next cycle wave, next few cycle waves to the upside. So I don't see them pulling back, but again, I do see precious metals, mining stocks. I see them in a bull market. The mining stocks, when we were in Vancouver, Canada, on the 15th or the 19th of January of this year, we were, the mood could not have been more depressing. But at that time because that's the actual low on the mining stocks, and we were on stage saying, the mining stocks are supposed to be bottoming right now, and they did. And you'll notice that the mining stocks have gone up incredibly, basically, straight up ever since January. It's been an incredible move. So I don't see anything terrible for the mining stocks. I see a pullback as the markets, might get tied up a little bit in the market crash, but I don't see there being any kind of major damage done to the mining stocks whatsoever.
All right, now moving to the gold and silver markets, Maljin Wong is wanting to know when you see silver breaking $50 an ounce.
We've had, since last year, I've been hoping that, and looking for because we knew the bottom would come in latter parts of December, or in December for silver. So the silver bottomed at 1360 in December of last year, 2015, and it bottomed 2 weeks after gold did. Gold bottomed on the first week of December 3rd, when we did our interview saying the bottom's here. So since then, we've had up cycles, and we've had a bullish trend forming. We've had higher highs on both gold and silver. Gold leads, silver follows, and then silver catches up and then starts to take over the lead. So you'll notice silver's been much more strong here in the past couple of months relative to gold. And so what we're looking for is silver to break $22, and then we expect it to go vertical. So that's what I'm looking for here. I have a flag pattern that comes in around $22. If silver breaks 22, then it could gap, or it could go very powerfully to the upside. So then the question is where do the brakes come on for silver? Where could they try to stop it? But the problem is that they've had 5 years of price suppression on silver. So I think there's going to be a very, very big issue to put the brakes on silver once it starts to move. So I believe we will still see new all-time highs. From what I'm foreseeing here, if it comes sooner, but I do look for new all-time highs for silver this year. And if it comes sooner rather than later, silver could actually go to 3 digits still this year, possibly, depending on when silver breaches 50. So it's pretty exciting times here. For silver and for gold, and I see a very powerful up move. There's an extreme amount of support for gold and silver to the downside, and so pressure's building right now. It's kind of like a massive spring, and this spring's been actually building for 5 years now. So there is an immense amount of pressure for silver and gold to go vertical, and when it goes, it'll be interesting to see where they could stop it, because it's been down here for a long time.
Now, this next viewer wants to know, when you see gold and silver peaking?
Well, again, we've had a down cycle and a suppression cycle for like 5 years on silver since 2011. So we've got years ahead for gold and silver. I think silver is going to do crazy numbers. Gold as well too. Gold's probably going to go to 10,000 easy, if depending on how much money is eliminated from the system. It could go much higher. But we've got years forward for gold and silver. Along the way, silver is going to be the volatile one of the two. So gold will be much more stable. But if silver goes to 3 digits, it'll fall pretty sharply off that number, then go higher again. But we have years of a bull market for gold and silver, and these are the lows. So we've got years and years going forward still, and so without giving an actual time point, I can tell you years is extremely generous, and we've got a long time to be owning gold and silver, and big numbers ahead for both gold and silver.
Now, Gary Brown is wanting to know about gold and silver price manipulation. He asks, how do you see technology fixing the precious metal price manipulation? Will there ever be price separations so the paper price will be different than the physical price?
Well, that's a great question, and this is where you have to look at. You got the China's opened up their market now, so they've got they've got their own market, and so what I believe will happen at some point is the price fixing that's been happening on the West will be taken over by the East, and so when the price will be set, whether the U.S. likes it or not, it'll be set at some point, or by whether the West likes it or not. I think the price will be set in the East, and then when that happens, that's when all controls are lost, and you're going to see true price discovery. But that'll be an event to watch, where you're going to see silver might maybe have $10 days to the upside, $20 days, and so it'll just when the controls are lost, they'll be lost, and it's just literally I think it's going to just transition straight to the East, away from the West, and so the paper price, you can put whatever price you want on it. Here in the U.S., for example, but if it's trading at extremely large numbers in the East, I think that will change very dramatically, very quickly, and you're going to see physical just disappear. And so I think it's going to be it's literally going to be a transition from West to East.
Now, Ken Landon is wanting to know about your perspective on gold versus silver. Now, he asks, would you advise owning silver more than gold? And also, what kind of ratio of silver to gold do you see in the future?
Those are tough questions in terms of the ratio for the future. Realistically, the in-ground ratio, anybody who does mining will know the in-ground ratio is somewhere in the range of 9-to-1 to 14-to-1, but so maybe an average of 10-to-1 for the ratio gold to silver. So for every 1 ounce of gold you mine, you get 10 ounces of silver. Problem with that equation is that the ratio right now is like, I think, 70 or 65-to-1. So you've got a disproportionate equation right now. So silver is definitely the way to buy precious metals, just because it's so much more inexpensive. For every ounce of gold you buy, you can actually buy 65 or 68 ounces of silver. So it's a much better place to be, nice. It's a much better metal to be purchasing in terms of the ratio. I do see the ratio getting back at some point, because basically a war cycle would put silver back to 10-to-1, for example. And now again, because of the price suppression for 5 years, could it jump up and spike and maybe get to 1-to-1 at some point for a short period of time? Anything's possible, but I do know that we've had a ratio of about high 70s or 80-to-1, and so now the ratio is starting to drop, and so silver is going to rise more proportionally relative to gold, and I believe at some point it'll at least, maybe when it gets to 30-to-1 or something like that, or 20-to-1, you might that might be a decent time to look at maybe doing a swap. Of some silver for some gold, but again, it's just that right now at the ratio of where it's at, I think it's an incredible place to be, purchasing silver relative to gold, and but again, you do want to have some gold as well too, and but I think silver's the way to go.
Definitely. I mean, I've heard before some people say, that silver is probably more undervalued than gold, but also you need to be able to stomach the price volatility, because we've seen silver a lot more volatile than gold. So gold is a good investment, probably, in my opinion, if you want something that's going to be more stable and move up more stably, but in the long term, silver will probably outperform, but be a lot more volatile.
Right, like when silver hits some of its extreme prices, it's really fun to watch, but then it comes down quite dramatically and quickly off those highs. So if silver breached went up to 3 digits, it could keep going higher, but then the retracement off of 3-digit silver would be pretty spectacular to watch. And you don't want to be holding paper positions if it drops like that, because it'd be pretty dramatic in terms of the fall. But then yes, it'll come back up, and if then you're making new highs, it goes through more swings, price swings, than gold does. And what I've discovered with looking at cycles, gold to silver, it's because silver has a slightly different cycle relative to gold. Gold has a more stable cycle, and silver has a more volatile cycle in terms of time. So silver has an extra amount of there's a time period where it has more downside than gold does, so when the ratios do get smaller, that is a good time to swap some silver for gold, so you don't need to go through those massive mood swings or price swings on silver. But absolutely, silver is money. It's just like gold. It's gold and silver. They're both money, and in times of distress, they're what you want to be holding.
No, yeah, I just was thinking, when I've looked at the markets, that's what I've seen. Silver is more volatile than gold. But do you know the reason behind that? I mean, why is that?
Well, I think, nations, when big countries go in, they buy gold. They don't buy silver. And so nations of the world will always be buying gold. It's money of kings. And they don't sell it as much. They buy and they hoard it, and they buy it and they hold it. So you're going to have a lot more stability in it versus a metal like silver. It's tied in with the markets, and it has some relation with the stock market. So when stock markets fall, it has a tendency to react with the stock market, and gold will not. And so it has a little bit more volatility. But then when gold's going up, silver is really going up. And then when gold's toppings, and the stock market's crashing, gold will hold up better, and silver can tend to fall with the equity markets for a short period of time. Again, the ratio now is reversed. So I don't see silver falling a whole lot with the stock markets anymore, but still, it will have a little bit more tendency to fall with the equity markets than gold will, definitely.
All right. Well, moving on here, Blair is wanting to know, I own silver certificates presently underwater bought in 2011 and realize that not holding the actual physical metal is risky. I wonder how high silver can go where the paper silver promises may be dissolved or not honored. Could I wait till $35 to $70 an ounce to sell them back to the bank, or would I be wise to sell them now and buy the physical metal?
That's a great question, and it's a very hard answer to give, because at some point, when silver does, like I was saying earlier, if the precious metals market transitions from west to east, you have to ask if there's a counterparty risk, and if you're holding physical precious metals, gold and silver, you have no counterparty risk. But if you're paper, there's always that counterparty risk. So honestly, I don't know how to answer that question, because if it does transition, the prices transition, you have a massive price move or reset to the east. Will those papers be honored? Will it be honored here? I don't know. And so it's a tough question to answer, and I wish I had the answer for it, but I don't. But I've always encouraged, and every time I do an interview or whenever I make a video, I always encourage physical, because there is no counterparty risk in that money.
All right. Now, Matthew Beatty wants to know, what does your cycle analysis have in regards to Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin is actually interesting. I don't talk much about Bitcoin because I do believe everybody needs to first own gold and silver. So once you have enough gold and silver, I think you can look at some Bitcoin. It's fun to look at. I believe the only reason Bitcoin is going to go to some incredibly large numbers in the future, and I believe that will happen. And the reason is because you won't be able to get gold, physical gold and silver. And so it'll be the go-to currency. It'll be the go-to form of monies when paper starts to fail. But the first thing I believe, is, it has more freedom of movement right now. There's less controls of it, and you'll notice that Bitcoin was trading in 200 to 300, just not too long ago, a few months ago, went up to 400, and then it's now sitting at in the 600 range, and that'll soon I believe going to breach and break out of that and go much higher. And beyond that, just when the silver supply, the gold supply dries up, when gold and silver really start to move, then Bitcoin's gonna move incredibly well in reaction, because people need to put their money somewhere, and if you can't get physical gold and silver, I think Bitcoin will be the go-to.
Diane Harbauer is wanting to know your view on the yuan joining the SDR currency basket on the specifically chosen date, October 2nd, 2016, the Jubilee date, as well as ramifications to current economic conditions. Can you expand a little bit on this?
Well, if my calculations are correct, what I did was I have a specific cycle I've been tracking that cycle for quite a few years now. And when the Jubilee failed when the market crash failed last September, when we knew it would, from that time point, when we basically knew that there was a time point coming up this October, the second that was critically important, the second inflection point. It's an inflection point in time, which is very, very important for our world. So and then when I calculate out the October 2nd date, it was interesting because all of these other things were coming up at that time frame. We had the SDR coming up the day before that, because it was going to be put the Chinese yuan was going to be put into the basket, and so I found the whole time point to be fascinating. And then the day after that was Rosh Hashanah, was the New Year. So that timing calculation was coming out to be extremely interesting. And from the market perspective, if we have a massive or sizable price drop between now and into October, gold moves powerfully higher with silver. It'll be interesting to see, what actually happens in October, because again, the cycles don't give me events, but they give me critical inflection points in our world and our time. And so I do know that's October time point will be an important time point for our world. There will be a lot of changes that will be implemented, and that's the best I can say at this time. So again, but coming up into that time point, it's important to make sure that we're not being in the market and do own physical gold and silver in anticipation of that time point. And I think after that, it's going to get even more exciting, for the precious metals.
Now, our last question will be another question from Gary Brown. He's wanting to know about if you see hyperinflation coming in the future.
Well, hyperinflation is basically a loss of faith in currency, and then they turn on the printing presses and print more money, and so you devalue your currency. So if gold's going up to 2,000, silver's at $50, $80, $100, then basically you have a hyperinflation environment, and you not only will gold and silver be going higher, but you'll have other commodities going higher as well too. But again, I do believe gold and silver will have the most power, especially silver. In that type of environment. So yes, I do see hyperinflation coming, and I do see that you can't, when the market crash does come, I think the immediate reaction is going to be turn on the printing presses, and then you have then you're going to start to experience hyperinflation, whereas right now it's been hidden. You haven't seen it. You haven't really seen it just yet.
All right. Well, Bull Polny, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, were there any other last thoughts you'd like to add, and where can our viewers find you online?
My website is gold2020forecast.com, And you can go there. We have a handful of videos that we've done in the past. We have also a YouTube channel. But at our webpage, if people are interested in time points, we've got a specific time points for. We're looking for a crash still to happen this year. There's a mathematical date that's calculated. That's supposed to occur between now and the October timeframe. So that's provided within our stock index. We have a cycle high time point coming in for gold this year as well, which is supposed to be pretty exciting high. So we'll offer that within our gold index. But I do see a very, very exciting year ahead for the precious metals. And since we called the low in December, price is never going to come back down to $1,045. And metals will continue to progress higher this year, and we have an exciting time. For 2016, don't be surprised if we have a little bit of price weakness still here in July, but then after that, I think we'll be progressing higher and higher.
Once again, Bo Polny, thank you so much for joining us today.